Go.
Eins, no, drei, zwei, eins.
What fuckery are we up to now?
All right. So, welcome back to Bonding Subjects for the 35 episodes.
Yes. You can hardly believe it.
And for that, I shall make a huge progress face. Anyway, though, welcome back to Bonding Subjects. I have Ryan, Jim, and the bastard, Owen, here today to discuss an interesting topic in preservation. We're going to be talking about canceled restorations. Restorations that were planned but never gone through with. The kind of restorations that would they have a small spark, but they don't spread the flame. The best restorations are like a full-on inferno. You start a small spark, and then it spreads, and then the project's complete. These restorations...
Then again, you also have the cases where if there's already a nice burning fire, like the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corps.
Yes. I mean, we already know that they already have 1601. Oh, wow.
1601. 2716.
They have 2716 in their shops working on the firebox, and they've even had an open house recently, which congratulations on Kishko for that open house where they invited a particular tank engine over to demonstrate the potential of steam. And this is going to be the first time this is going to be the last time 2716 is going to be open to the public for quite a while, because it's going to be going under its really intense restoration. Because, I mean, they said in the videos about 2716 that, you know, all the maintenance that they need to do is just like regular class 1 overhaul. So they just need to do it like
the engine may be in better shape than other locomotives that were actually in service, but you know, there's still a lot of work that has to be done.
I think it's mostly
switch sheets, maybe just
recently got their firebox sheets like not long ago.
Yes.
Can we not talk about 587? Because while it's not officially owned by them, they have graciously volunteered to let the nickel plate Mikado be restored on their property, and even recently painted the boiler black to prevent it from rusting.
Oh yeah, I actually did see that in the live stream in the background.
Good. So, now, since I think we're kind of going off topic here, what is the first? Who is going to be going first?
Andrew, have any ideas?
I mean, I definitely have one in mind.
I think I'll go first with a rather obscure restoration project.
Yes, because you, Ryan, were the one who decided on the topic of today's video.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, but anyway, continue.
First one is Lake Superior and Ishmael 19 and 20. 2 Toledo consolidations. So they were built by Alco in 1910 as part of the SC4 class, originally numbered 12 and 13, but renumbered 19 and 20 in 1923, and rebuilt to become better performers in the late 20s or early 30s. They were both used for iron ore trains and local freight trains until they were both withdrawn by the early 1960s, and subsequently sold to the Marquette and Huron Mountain Railroad, plus all the other SC4s. 19 did operate there in 1962 to 1965, but 20 didn't operate there at all. Like nothing more than the shell of its former self. Then, when the MNHM was abandoned in the mid-1980s, 19 and 20 were
Boy, got-
along with what?
I just said burger.
He's eating a burger.
Oh,
Burger. Anyway, continue.
When the Nicollet Badger Northern Railroad of Lona, Wisconsin for restoration that also never came. In that same year, some years later, they were sold to Max Biegert. Wanted to restore all three of them for, you guessed it, the Grand Canyon Railway of Williams, Arizona. After 18 was restored, here's our first canceled bit. He wanted to restore 1920 for supposed commuter service between the Williams Station and the 4-mile North Spur branch line that would have reached a nearby airport. This would have coped with passengers flying in all the way from Los Angeles and Las Vegas to visit the Grand Canyon National Park. What do you think of that?
I'm very good, man.
I can. Okay, one issue I can see. Now, granted, this may not be as big of an issue because, considering they're going to be burning oil, they're probably not going to be producing as much smoke. But one issue I can see with the locomotives running near the airport is, well, they're going to. The amount of smoke could obscure pilots' visions. And everything. To be fair, 611 during her 2017 trip to Charlotte, North Carolina, did pass by the airport, but I'm pretty sure that was the only time I can think of in the modern era that a steam engine has passed by near an airport.
But then again, most airplanes nowadays have GPSs where they can land through clouds, but whatever. This project was expected to be completed by 1991, as of course, this never happened in real life. First of all, rail connecting to the airport would have been too expensive, and secondly, Emperor Owen said about obscuring view. And third, DCRY actually knew from the very beginning that the SC4s wouldn't have been strong enough for their mainline sized needs. Trent 2018 was functionally removed from service by 2002, but whatever. Because this never came to fruition, 19 and 20 sat idle again until 19 received a cosmetic repaint for side display at Williams. But not before it was offered to be traded for a certain other locomotive we can get to later.
Riso. Yes. We're just talking about we're on our first canceled restoration project. Ryan, you can continue.
All right. But instead, 19 was again sold to MGM Theme Park in Vegas for stag display, with the addition of a more thorough cosmetic refurbishment to what it would look like I actually operate on a GCR. After our park was shut down early 2000s, 19 was again sold to the state of Frisco, Texas. And as for 20, it was traded along with 19 and 18 for SPNS 539. And after spending so many years in storage in Alamosa, Colorado, found itself in a more permanent home in Allen, Texas. So it's not very far from where 19 is, so they're very close to reuniting somewhat.
Okay. Interesting, very interesting. Steam engines operating near such a modern facility like an airport, that's definitely a very ambitious idea, but I can see why it didn't go through.
I would have liked to see it happen, but,
An
it's...
airport with a steam train running to it.
Oh, people would have loved it, but, there are reasons why it didn't happen, as you said. It would have been cool, but it just wouldn't have been...
too expensive and too unsafe.
Now, can
and
I?
they apparently weren't strong enough.
Now, who's going to be going next?
I would like to.
What are you gonna talk about then?
How about you guys talk about?
I got
How about you guys talk about a certain locomotive 19 was most traded for?
I got 2 locomotives in mind, but for now I'm just gonna talk about one. Anyway, Southern Pacific 5021.
Oh yeah.
Most of you guys, if you've watched the streams before, you should know about 5021. The only surviving Southern Pacific 3-cylinder steam locomotive, the 410-2, particularly
Yeah.
displayed,
Open the type.
displayed at the Rail Giants Train Museum, currently anyway. But this particular locomotive, one of only 3 surviving 3-cylinder steam locomotives in America that were built here.
Maybe 4? Because, I mean, I know of 60,000, 5021, and 9,000, and some 080 locomotive.
Well, the 080 doesn't exist anymore.
There's one left, I think.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm relatively sure, actually.
Well, if you find a picture of it, I'll talk about it. But anyway, on to 5021. During the preparation of the American Freedom Train, Ross Rowland considered using the 5021 for the trains, since it was long. It was
we got a new person in here.
who's CEPGE chairman.
Clacton Express Preservation Group. It's yeah. I forgot to mention that. We did mention that we're having that we might be having a guest tonight.
Well,
And, with this is
Yes, we are pleasured to have you.
You got canceled refurbishments.
Yes. Andrew, you'd like to continue?
yes. 5021 was chosen, thought of by Ross Rowland to pull the American Freedom Train. And so it was actually taken off its display, but Ross Rowland changed his mind and sent it back. But tragically, when he was sending the locomotive back, the locomotive was dropped, damaging its middle cylinder heavily.
I'd also like to point out the fact that 5021 was actually steamed up by Rail Giants a couple, 2 or 3 times in the early 1960s.
And I actually have a photo of that on the cool wall, right there. But actually, guys, should we do the cool wall again? Should I start making more pictures and adding to the cool wall?
Yes.
You get a bigger wall, but
We're gonna need a bigger wall.
We can at least do that next stream.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I think we should get back on topic.
Yes. Anyway, 5021, yes, my favorite. Anyway, 5021, after being dropped, was permanently sidelined. And, well, it currently resides on display at the Rail Giants Train Museum, which is actually one of the few displays over there where you can blow its whistle. Fun fact, anyway. But this is just so sad, because not only did Ross Rowland just deny the locomotive for a run in preservation, he eliminated the chance of it ever running again.
I don't necessarily think it was his fault that the engine got dropped, but I can see where you're going.
I'm genuinely disappointed because this particular locomotive right here would have been a pretty decent excursion start. I mean, if 610 could have.
Yes, but you're leaving out one thing. The fact that 5021 has 3 cylinders.
Yeah.
And what I assume is
conjugated valve gear. Yes.
Conjugated valve gear.
Yes, it does have conjugated.
Granted, that was actually preferred in the States from what I read because there were less parts or the American version actually had less parts on it than the traditional double Walsharts arrangement. But it still would have been yeah, but it still would have been a hassle to deal with.
I mean, then again, people run steam locomotives that have Stephenson's valve gear in the preservation era. And you guys knew that Stephenson's valve gear is quite a pain to deal with, especially coming from my own experience since, it is simple, but you need to be a contortionist to go in between the frame underneath a boiling hot vessel in order to lubricate some parts.
Okay.
But yeah, 5021, it's a shame. It's really a shame.
I agree. Now, who is going to be...
Jim, would you like to say what?
More about a certain Texas type. Bessemer and Lake Erie 643, but sadly I just can't find enough information as to why its refurbishment was canceled at the last minute.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Jim. I would have sponsored that restoration myself.
Got landlocked or something, or maybe one of the higher-ranking volunteers in the organization that refurbished the engine died or something. I don't know.
Wrong.
I heard that here's an interesting theory, though. I did hear that that they actually realized that the engine would be a bit too big for their purposes and would not be good and theoretically wouldn't be very good at speed.
Wrong. It would have been pretty good. I know everything about trains, yes.
Find the exact reason.
I'm going to donate the Kishko a small loan of $1 million.
Hey, Andrew, shut up. As I said before the stream, I tried to join some Facebook group, some unofficial Facebook group about the Age of Steam Roundup to try and get more information about the locomotive. But guess what? They never bothered to accept my application for joining.
Jim, you do know that the Age of Steam Roundhouse has a website, right? And it has the history of all of its collection, right?
Couldn't find anything about 643. All I could find about 643 on that website is just, them moving it from the Keys Rocks to Sugar Creek.
Well, maybe that's
it.
Well, tell us about how it was a canceled restoration.
Well, the locomotive was nearly completely finished from its refurbishment. They did manage to get it to move.
I just said it was.
Yes, others say it was with compressed air, but for one reason or another, it stalled. Well,
Jim, I found a Wikipedia article that actually gives somewhat of a reason.
Ryan wrote that.
And what I'm reading, the engine's although more than capable of pulling long trains, the locomotive's long, rigid wheelbase and weight necessitated relatively straight and sturdy rails to operate on.
Sounds like a P2 case, if you ask me.
Since 1999, few lines could accommodate or were willing to accommodate such a massive locomotive in excursion service.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you have a 10-couple engine, you're more often.
But I honestly think we should, let you speak because this is your session.
You're the one who interrupted, Owen. Anyway, continue, Jim.
yeah, sadly, I don't have much to say other than they managed to move it once for a little bit, and that's about it. And ever since then, the engine has been quietly rotting away until
The Age of Steam Roundhouse came in and saved the day.
Haul it back to Sugar Creek. Very unlikely that it will be refurbished to operational condition, but you can be assured that they're going to touch it up cosmetically at least, so it looks nice.
Yeah, no.
I will say this though.
I mean, I thought that I heard or read somewhere that like the original owner or one of those high-ranking volunteers had died sadly before the work could be finalized. Just sucks that I can't find that anymore.
Well,
I mean, to be fair, I don't think much information would have been given on Best Member like year number 643. Trying to look for it.
Well, I will say this though. Although the restorations was eventually canceled, the fact that they actually got it to successfully operate under compressed air shows that they were really close to finishing it.
yeah, they were determined.
Because here's the thing.
But no cigar.
Here's the thing though. 29. The time when 2926 was moved under compressed air was just before she was steamed up and moved.
Yes, and I was there for that. Yeah.
I'm looking up on the Steam locomotive on the Age of Steam Roundhouse website right now, and whereas other locomotives have like a bit of general history and like a little chart displaying some of the specifications, with 643, nothing. Just a bunch of updates about the locomotive's move.
643 is mine now. Yeah, I'm Donald Trump. I'm gonna donate a small loan of $1 million to the Age of Steam Roundhouse to destroy that thing for me. Yeah, I've been banned off Facebook and Twitter. Good day, gentlemen.
Okay. I think we're getting far into
Politics.
Anyway, though, since we are exactly 22 minutes and 30 seconds in, it is time to check the stream. Sub, I already noticed that. Oh, we need to talk about 5,000. Santa Fe 5,000. Anyway, what happened to? Okay, we're not gonna answer that one. That one's kind of personal.
Ryan kind of said that.
Tyler Green asked, "Hey Andrew, how come they didn't restore Duluth and Northern Minnesota 282 number 14?" I've never heard of that one.
For a certain consolidation.
We have to simply put too many of those.
They got shafted for some consolidation, right?
Duluth, Northern Minnesota 14 is a Mikado.
Yes, but it got shafted for some consolidation, right? As in replaced?
Oh.
Yes.
Anyway.
Wait a second. It got replaced by a Connie?
Yep. DMNR 332 or whatever it used to be.
Yeah. Anyway.
Can we not talk about this now?
Also, Andrew, you think you can remove comments on the stream? Or at least to remove. Or.
One particular one, yes, I can. Okay. Anyway.
Just ask.
Oh, Tyler gave us a little fact. 14 was in a Disney film, Iron Will.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chairman, you're right here.
Find out about 14 in a wrong day.
Right here.
Thank you very much. Can I ask at some point in this evening, are you able to make space, as I do have a story that is on this subject that I could tell?
Well, we're talking about it. We're gonna be streaming for the next hour or so.
Fair enough. Well, if you gentlemen don't mind, I see the topic of tonight is that having that cancelled restorations restorations that are still in progress. Now, I think one of the reasons that Riso here invited me is, as you may be able to tell by my name, I am the chairman of a preservation group that is trying to rectify a cancelled restoration and put a new one in progress.
Mm.
Now, it may not be fully what this group is interested in, because I can see this is a very American-based server. This is a UK piece of rolling stock.
We do have compassion for British locomotives, rest assured, mate.
Fair enough.
We don't laugh at British steam engines, we respect it.
That's the thing, though. Riso is correct. It is not steam. If you have a look at the profile pictures that I have on here,
it's from diesel or electric passenger train.
It's an electric unit, an EMU they call it. If anyone's interested, the class name is the Class 309, and they were built in 1961, so they're as old as some of the steam engines, and they continued use until the year 2000, so very long service lives. One of the first mainline electric units, electric multiple units in the UK, and they were based off the standard British Railway Mark 1 body shell vehicle. So it was basically a standard Mark 1 coach with a cab on the end, and then a hole cut out in part of the roof to fit the pantograph. Ran on the UK standard 25 kilovolt overhead electric system. And as I say, it ran originally on the Great Eastern Main Line between London Liverpool Street and Clacton-on-Sea. That's when they came to the nickname of the Clacton Express, which is where our charity name comes from, the Clacton Express Preservation Group. Now, fast forward, they were withdrawn in 1994, approximately 30 years after beginning service on the Great Eastern Main Line. And then they transferred up to Norfolk, UK, to a place called Manchester, where they worked local services until being withdrawn in 2000. Once that was done, 2 were sent for departmental use, and the rest of them subsequently scrapped. These 2 departmental units were overhauled and then continued use until 2005. Whereby then they were put into storage and then sold into preservation in 2009. Now, the original owners, which is where the cancelled restorations part of it comes in, the original owners of the 6 vehicles were a museum called the Electric Railway Museum in Coventry, which is a place in the Midlands in the UK. They had both of the units, which were numbered 616 and 624. Now, what happened to them is that they cosmetically restored 616 into the London and South Eastern livery, which is a black, orange and grey, which is commonly referred to as Jaffa Cake scheme. And then they were going to give the same treatment to the other unit, which was 64, which by this point hadn't had a good repaint since 2001. But unfortunately, in 2018, the museum that were caring for them, they had to shut. The Electric Railway Museum of Coventry, they had some land disputes and were forced to shut by the council, who then subsequently turned the museum land into housing property development, which was brilliant. Because you've got to make way for those houses, haven't you, nowadays? So that really put a stopper on the preservation attempt to save both of them, to stop one being scrapped, because if it was the case if they didn't find new homes, they would be scrapped. They sold one of them to fund the move of the other to a safe home. So 624 was sold to a place called Lavender Line in Islefield, East Sussex, which is very near the famous Bluebell Railway, that a lot of you may know. and then 616 was saved and went to the Tanant Valley Railway in Wales. That still survives today, still immaculately restored, but is just sat on a siding. They're not going to do anything else to it. It's just going to stay as a static sort of museum / cafe. The other unit, 624, as I said, it went to the Lavender Line. It sat there for 3 years with minimal work done to it because priorities fell to other things. And now they need space and are selling it on again. It was put up for sale in July, August this year, and they have said we're valuing it on spare parts, and if no one buys it for further preservation, which until we came along there was no interest in doing so, if no one had done that, again, it would be scrapped. So it's been our goal to raise enough money to purchase the unit for further preservation, and we have aims of getting it fully restored, repainted, interior redone, and then running again.
I'm not going to say anything because all I have in mind is insulting.
What do you mean?
No, if you can't, no.
Let me put it this way, though. It's electric, which at least is better than diesel electric.
Yeah, you're right. I mean...
Yeah. Which is actually a major soft spot for electrical.
I like electrics, but...
me discussing LS9 19 and 20 was a monster segment.
They've got quite a story, and the fact that they're electric, to be honest, makes them all the more unique and worth saving, because electric preservation has been pretty much ignored, and I feel that we are repeating history in a sense, because back in the 60s, you've got to remember, whether it was American or whether it was UK steam, people were just letting steam engines go for scrap because they were just there. It was a current thing. No one really cared about them. All they cared about was the brand new machines.
Here's the difference, though. They seem to care a lot more about them in Britain than they did in the US. Because the end of steam in Britain was treated as a more tragic, thing when it was happening. It was... In America, it was just, since it was individual since our railways or railroads were not nationalized.
Yes.
It was railroads. Our railroads were basically just scrapping them without really much public fanfare.
To be fair, there were some railroads that did celebrate the end of steam on their company.
Yeah, like Norfolk and Western's farewell to steam. CB&Q with their, the excursions for a while, and even the...
They ran them until 1966. Yeah, still,
And even UP never truly gave up steam.
Well, the point that a lot of people sort of say is, they look back with the benefit of hindsight and say, "Oh, why didn't someone think to preserve this engine or this engine? Or this would have been really nice to have." And it's all in the benefit of hindsight when it's just a little bit too late. And I just feel that
you're right. Actually, you're completely right. Because some of our favorite locomotives that we personally love, but yet we don't ever get to see, are the ones that are sadly no longer with us. 2174, 774.
What about the Blue Goose?
3967. The New Haven I-5s.
Also, what about for UK stuff? Just I know, such as the W1, such as the LNR W1, or maybe even...
How about a J70?
Yeah. You said about the LNR J70.
I think one of our most lamented losses was Silver Link, the first A4 Pacific.
And at one point was the fastest train in the world.
Yes.
Something that not even Mallard was able to
achieve.
Indeed.
Another cancelled restoration Well, I know an easy one.
Hold on, guys. Let's have a moment of silence for the fallen classes.
Now, how about I bring up another pretty good example of a canceled refurbishment or restoration, whatever.
Yes.
It's a certain Norfolk and Western boy.
Is it 12/18 for 1996 debut?
Yep.
Yeah, that.
Because of 4 fatal nails in 1994. I think maybe 4. 3 of them definitely confirmed in 1994. First one, which is a little bit, which I'm not 100% sure of, happened in 1994. The death of the Claytor brothers, who were the 2 lovely gentlemen responsible for the Norfolk Southern Steam program and the 12/18's return. Then we got a major timetable and route restrictions limiting to where the steam engines could go and when they can run exactly, rising insurance costs, and then finally we had Richard Hammond's redneck step-cousin from the States causing a serious accident involving 9 of the steam program's passenger carriages, with 2 of them damaged beyond economical repair.
Hammond!
Norfolk Southern had to pull the plug out of it all. Meanwhile, the locomotive in question, Norfolk Western number 12/18, was in bits because it was undergoing a
he's in bits.
refurbishment at the time since 1991, with the intention being to have it ready and fully steamed up and in better mechanical shape than ever before in 1996.
But it never
to be.
It never happened.
Now is on Saturday with very little parts inside.
Yep.
That's one place, though, that I think UK and the US differ, is that because you're mainly still quite privatised, you have a lot of your individual companies that have been going for that long, that they respect their history and heritage and actually want to restore the original engines that used to run their...
That's actually a rarity.
Really?
It is.
So,
because most of these, because you have another thing you got to put into perspective is that most of these companies are owned by cokehead stockbrokers on Wall Street who not only don't give a shit about the history, but are also destroying the railroads by firing people, what else?
You said firing people twice.
Making it so that they run less trains with more cars on them, which sometimes causes major accidents. Less investment into infrastructure. So yeah, it's still. I'd say you have a much better preservation movement in England or anywhere else in the United Kingdom, because you guys are still able to run steam engines frequently on the main line, much more frequently than we.
When was the last time we had a steam locomotive run on the main line?
Apparently.
Big Boy, obviously.
Well, Big Boy, another locomotive besides.
I also wanted to bring back to Mr. CPG that I'm not from the United States. I'm a scrubby European boy from the Netherlands. And if you look in USA locomotives, here's a picture of the engine that I was talking about. Looks great on the outside, but on the inside, apparently it's a bit of a shell.
It's the only surviving 2664 locomotive in the world, and yet it's empty.
I mean, I can't remember which one, but I have heard the story, and it has happened in the UK as well. With you can class this under sort of council restoration projects, as it's literally them sabotaging themselves to make sure it will never be restored again. And that is, of course, a practice, quite frankly, absurd practice of filling the firebox or boiler with concrete after it's finished its ticket. And this will pretty much ensure the engine would never run again with that original boiler or firebox.
Is that a rumor is that, like, I heard there were rumors that's what happened to Mallard.
Oh, it's not rumors, it's fact. I've seen it. There is concrete in the firebox.
Wait, in Mallard?
Yep, Mallard will never see him again with her original
No!
The thing is, though, like this is already probably for another time. But very little of that logo is actually original. Not even a tender or even tenders.
Bureaucratic pieces of shit! Why?
Why?
Spend 6.4 million on restoring Flying Scotsman steam, so they have no money for Mallard now. Beef shenanigans. I know the reason why they do it, right? It is ironically to stop deterioration, because if you fill the firebox or boiler with concrete, then it's a complete solid mass internally that will protect the inside layer and stop it from further corrosion and warping or anything like that. So ironically it's protecting it, but then it's also ensuring it will never run again.
So Mallard now will...
It needs a new boiler if it's ever going to steam again.
But there is also, can I just say as well, on topic of this, the National Conservatory Museum, who own a lot of the unique items in the UK, they don't take particularly good care of some of their engines, and the actions that they have done ensure that they will never run again.
Well, at least that's better. Well, I will say this though. At least that's better than how the U.S. NRM treats their pieces of equipment, because at least cosmetically your locomotives are still in good nick. If you look at the U.S. NRM, that's actually located in Green Bay, Wisconsin, actually where another one of the A4s Dwight D. Eisenhower is located.
Indeed.
You can see how fucking, like, everything inside the building looks fine, right? Outside, everything starts to look like complete shit. Why? Because they had a clause that put them. There was a clause in the paperwork that officially put them into existence that said that they were not allowed to receive neither federal or state funding. Now, federal, I think most museums in the U.S. could actually, railroad museums in the U.S. don't even receive federal funding. Very few actually do. But state funding?
Yeah, I guess.
State funding, that's a fucking death nail. So, don't get me wrong, the people in charge really want to fix up the museum, but they just don't have the money capable of doing it.
I hate. Look, you see.
Explain why Dwight got in such a bad external condition. I would explain why.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you.
There was quite the outrage from the UK rail fan community when she was brought home for 2013 for the 75th Great Gathering. I'm not being rude, but she was in a complete shambles of an exterior condition, and it took a lot of money from the British NRM to completely restore her back to 30s Garter blue.
CEP, I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm 100%, well, 99% embarrassed by the preservation of America's steam locomotives most of the time. We were the ones who had to issue the 1,472 day inspections. We were the ones that caused a freaking boiler explosion in 91. We were the ones who caused Flying Scotsman to get stuck here.
The UK actually has something very similar to that. Their steam engines can only run 10 years before they require complete overhauls.
Well, are their locomotives in terrible condition on the outside?
A lot of them are.
Look at Steamtown. That place used to be a place thriving with vaporized water in the air, and now it's just a literal scrapyard.
Which you can jokingly refer to as Diesel Town or Scrap Town.
I mean,
The only steam locomotive we have running on the main line at the moment is Big Boy, and that thing is overrated as shit.
I mean,
It only runs once or twice a year on round trips, and people bitch and moan about all the places it doesn't go to.
I actually believe Big Boy's back in Cheyenne.
it is.
Yeah, its latest tour is finished. I think they're now gearing up for a second, smaller tour later in the year.
I do think.
If I may add, are we talking about canceled restoration projects, or are we comparing British and American now?
At this point, I'm very disappointed with how America handles preservation nowadays.
Yeah, what I was trying to say was the engine I'm thinking about, particularly, that could have been a very good restoration project. It has been cancelled several times because, and it's purely because of the way the British NRM have treated the engine, and that is the very unknown to international appeal. It's a very sort of obscure engine, but it's called the Great Eastern J17 class, and they're a large 060 tender engine, or large for the UK anyway. And there was quite a few of them about. They dated from the 1900s, just before. Survived until 1962, and the last one was preserved. Now, when preserved, the NRM stated that they wanted to preserve it in as withdrawn condition, so keep it in exactly the status it in when it was withdrawn. Now,
pardon me interrupting, but do you mean the locomotive that used to be London Northeastern number 8217 with red coupling rods?
8217, yes, that's the one.
Why do you guys say it like that anyway?
And it actually, here's a picture of it that I'm going to chuck in UK locomotives. Yep. Yeah, and that looks like spice. But clearly that is not preserved in as withdrawn condition.
My point exactly, I was just getting to. They said that they wanted to preserve that in as withdrawn condition, and they completely went against that because it's now been repainted twice in preservation.
It also went back to its original Great Eastern identity, whatever the hell its engine number would have been back then.
It's never been the Great Eastern identity in preservation. It was very early LNER when first repainted. It was 1217E, which was its just after grouping number.
No, so 1217.
Yeah, 1217E, and it had the E on it because that was the E suffix that denoted Eastern engines before they did the renumbering scheme in sort of the early 1920s, the London North Eastern Railway. That's how it was then.
I didn't know that the LNER had a policy of identifying locomotives of its constituent companies with a letter after the flippin' engine number. No, here's a different picture.
I mean, like, the way they did it was that basically Northbridge would basically, like, if it was Northeastern, I think it was D, if it was, like, if it were North, like, if it was Great Northern, it would be an N. If it was Great Central, it would be C, and if it was Northbridge, it would be B.
For example, just to show you that, yeah, that's how it was preserved. You can just see the E in the. That's the preserved photo. That's the. That's not in service.
You can already kind of tell because it looks a bit new for it to be like in like steam era picture. Oh, there's another example, 990E. So that's another former Great Eastern design.
Exactly, that's what they call the N7s. So anyway, the story of this preservation of this engine. So yeah, they've already broken their own rule, but then they decided to try and keep reinforcing their own broken rule. No one's told them they have to do this, but they have kept it mechanically as withdrawn condition. Cosmetically, it's not, but mechanically, it is, to the point and to the detriment of the locomotive. For example,
Hypocrite!
Yep, hypocrites.
But then again, I don't necessarily care. I mean, let me put it this way: I do prefer flipping big four liveries or such and numbering over British Railways here. So, for example, here's an infamous one: Royal Scot 6100 from the LMS.
Mhm.
Although it is preserved in the flipping rebuilt condition by William Stanier, just paint that thing up in LMS red again. I know, like, it's not historically accurate, but fuck it, it looks beautiful.
It does.
Anyway,
So the condition of 1217 mechanically, doesn't matter about the paint job, but mechanically, the cylinders are said to be completely shot to pieces. There's the bore of the cylinder so much now that it's so loose that if you actually were able to hold the rods, you could wiggle them and wiggle the piston heads inside of the casting. There's so much play now. It's just completely eroded away. The boiler, the barrel is non-existent. You've heard stories that it can rust so much that if you get an engineer's hammer and tap it, you can put a hole straight through some boilers nowadays. Some of the older preserved ones, this is one of them. You could put a hole through the boiler with just a tap of an engineer's hammer. But it gets worse because, again, remember how I said they strive to keep it in as withdrawn condition? Well, they went to a literal extreme, and if you go inside of the firebox today, there are ashes and embers from the last fire in 1962 still in the firebox, and they never cleaned it out. They never cleaned the ash pan, and they never cleaned the inside of the fire grate. Indeed, yeah. Yep, and so that's the case that the sulfuric concentrate of the ash clinker, it's completely eroded away. There's no hope for it. It would need a complete new boiler and firebox. To add, when shunting, someone was shunting it with an 08 around Barrow Hill and described that this is heavier than this should be. And they checked and they looked inside the boiler. The boiler is still nearly full of water.
No, don't tell me that it froze.
They never drained the boiler properly.
Did the water freeze to become ice at some point, causing even more damage to the inside of the boiler?
Probably. And then it was drained now subsequently, but apparently there's still residue in there. Don't know. And then the best bit as well about the tender's no better condition because there is basically no tender tank anymore. It's just a hole.
You want to know what this whole NRM business kind of reminds me of them wanting to keep it as original condition, which is overall detrimental to the operation of the locomotive. It reminds me a lot of a certain Atlantic from the United States, Pennsylvania Railroad 7002. Think of it, which is one of the and hopefully this doesn't offend, but it is one of the contenders for the first locomotives to reach 100 miles per hour, albeit there's no really solid proof of that. Albeit I can see it doing it. Think of it as sort of an American version of Henry Oakley, the locomotive Henry Oakley, because it was built around 1902. It was built for the Pennsylvania Railroad's, let's just say, high-grade express trains like the Broadway Limited, until it was retired in the 19. Now, the original 7002, unfortunately, was cut up by accident in the 1930s. So they had to get another locomotive, the 8063, which is what the modern, and renumber it to 7002.
Oh, this is an imposter.
Yes. It's not the first time that's been done.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm sure someone mentioned Royal Scott earlier. I'm sure you all really know.
We all know the
conspiracy theory about the numbers 12.
Being King's Dragoon Guardsman.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, something I've been wanting to do right now for a few minutes, though, since hearing the whole debacle about that Great Eastern J17, was it right? Yep. And given how poorly they preserved it, seeing how they didn't bother to actually clean the thing up for preservation, and it's gone to crap so harsh, I feel like I have to let out my inside pain. 3, 2, 1, here we go.
How long have we been off track now? Sorry to ask that.
Yeah, we've been off track for a while.
17 was on track.
I was just trying to, and I think this one is a bit on track since I've never been able to actually talk about a few specific instances myself. So I wasn't really finished telling the story of 7002 at one point was donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, which is right next to the world-famous Strasburg Railroad. In 1982, the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania allowed the Strasburg Railroad to lease the locomotive and run the engine and run it on their tracks. And they were able to do so for a few years, until 1989. And they also did it with another...
They discovered that the threading for the top stay bolts in the crown sheet was crap. On top of the fact that they had bell bear fireboxes made of copper. Basically, the U.S., like nowadays, American steam aficionados try to stay away from bell bear fireboxes purely because of the relatively poor post-war bell bear fireboxes that the 7002 was.
And 1360. Yeah. Now, the Strasburg Railroad actually offered, because from what the crews loved that locomotive. They loved how fast even though they couldn't run it that fast on their 4-mile trackage. But whenever they actually got it on the main line, it was a pretty fast locomotive. They wanted to actually restore that engine badly, but the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania was like, no, we're not going to let you replace the firebox on that engine because it would alter the original design.
Even though it's not even the original.
Yeah. They did
the original design was a piece of crap.
They did the same thing to a 440 number 1223, which also operated on Strasburg's trackage.
Basically was a running mate to 7002, or quote unquote 7002.
So both locomotives are now on display, and interestingly, so you know how you guys have like Yellow or the Great Northern Railway has 990, which is the small Atlantic, and 251, which is the big Atlantic. Well, the Pennsy also had the E6 Atlantics, which were famous for being extremely fast as well. And one number 460 actually survives in the same museum, albeit that engine never really got to change. Never really, although the 460 never really got the chance to get restored. Now,
apologies if I get myself real quick. I wanted to check if the big enough screaming could be heard on the stream, and it couldn't. God damn it.
Yes, but as I'm trying to say before I I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about a couple canceled restorations.
Can I go now, like, before anything? Because none of us else, it's just been you, Owen, and the other guy talking most of the entire stream.
You had your section on.
Yeah, I did it quickly.
But I haven't been able to talk about what I wanted to, really, because I never got the chance.
Well, can I go first with a small segment about 5,000?
Fine.
Madam Queen, Santa Fe 5,000. That 1-2-10-4 that almost got restored to operation, but there was a lack of funds and a lack of area to run it, and so now it's just still on display. Anyway, there, quickly, done. Go, Owen! Now!
Okay. First one is going to be Southern Railway Consolidation number 385. Now, if you remember our great livery debate from a while back, you will know that I have mentioned it in there along with all the other Southern consolidations. But I'm not going to be talking about its livery, but this is going to be mostly about its life after the Morris County Central. But for those who want a quick recap, it was built in 1907 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works for the Southern Railway. In the 1940s, it was sold to a short line in Virginia known as the Virginia Blue Ridge, where it ran until 1956, around 1959. In 1963, it was purchased by Mr. Earl Gill, Jersey, to run it on his Morris County Central tourist operation. However, this operation, after 15 years of many very unfortunate outside circumstances, would close its. The 385 in particular was, by the end of the MCC, was not in very good condition at all. In fact, it was actually withdrawn 2 years prior to the railroad closing up for good in 1978. But after the railroad closed up, two groups tried to restore the engine. In 1989, the Delaware Otsego system attempted a restoration of the engine and actually towed it to one of their workshops. However, this never went through. Why? I'm not exactly sure, but I think it had to do with the absolute piss-poor mechanical shape of the engine. Another... Lisa, I think your mic is screwing up.
No, it's just that the sound is...
They were green!
Basically, what happens would be
we're just talking about canceled restorations, and I was in the middle of explaining 385s too.
Okay, also, like, the other thing as well is that, like, with just to be clear, my mic does have a tendency to pick up unwanted noise, which is why it makes the sound like it's playing.
Yeah. But as I'm trying to say,
did you guys even mention the first attempt to restore 6325, like before Jacobson's?
We've also been streaming live for about an hour now.
No, we haven't.
2 seconds of your time. I really enjoyed being here tonight, but I have got to head off and make a few more business calls.
All right.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been interesting to hear a different side of preservation, because I'm rarely involved in preservation. Or badly.
Take me with you!
I'm sorry, but I have to go.
No, take me with you. No.
But before I go, Andrew, always remember 9,000 psi.
Ah!
Okay, I want to finish up like my things about 385 and everything else first. So the second attempt was in the 1990s, and it was being done by a technical school. However, since this technical school was state funded, I guess they had a change in management, which viewed the steamlet engine restoration to be way too expensive. So the engine was now in a bit of a crisis. as in it was going to get cut up. And I think it was around 1999. The guy who owned a trucking company saved the engine from a. No, don't force me. It's bad perception there. But anyways, as I'm trying to say, the 385 so I think his name was Joseph Supor. He ended up saving the engine from a potentially nasty fate, and it was brought over to the Whippany Railroad. It was brought over to the Whippany Railroad Museum around St. It was eventually cosmetically restored in 2007, and it's actually undergoing yet another repaint as of now, since I've actually seen recent photographs of it in primer. But another thing I'd like to talk about, which some people actually may not have heard about, is So we all know 2101, both the American Freedom Train and the Chessie Steam Special, but barely anyone knows that it was actually commissioned, that it was actually planned to pull a very similar thing to the Chessie. In 1978, Ross Rowland actually submitted a proposition to Conrail to have the engine run a series of similar excursions to the Chessie Steam Special on their trackage. In fact, they actually submitted drawings of the engine in its proposed Conrail livery with ox tender and coaches and all. Unfortunately, Conrail turned down this offer because they were not in the best state in 1978. They were still kind of trying to clean up what Penn Central, they were trying to clean up Penn Central's mess still.
And let's not forget that 1 year prior, a certain other T1 and a Picado have caused steam operations to be banned on Conrail for the next several years.
Yeah, Grand Trunk Western 4070 chucked an eccentric rod, which delayed, of course, which caused Conrail to be very skeptical about steam operations on their trackage. But, so 2101, and of course we all know that 2101 got burned up in a roundhouse fire in 1979, and is now in display, albeit in very terrible condition, at the B&O Railroad Museum.
And now, Owen, because you have basically killed the stream of all of its humor, I'm going to have to eat this banana without peeling it.
Oh, no. You're gonna,
Thank you for the...
Oh, no.
Thank you for such kind words. I will remember them.
Here goes nothing!
So much for watching. Good night.
I don't want to do this. But you mentioned the Blue Goose! Every time anyone mentions the Blue Goose on a stream, I have to...
346 Blue Streamline Hudson.
Oh!
Jesus Christ.
Ah! Not again!
Days now, Andrew.
Fuck you! Owen, you did this to me!
That's because Owen's just nothing more than a goose.
And on that bombshell, I am going to take my leave from the stream.
No, you're not, Owen. You started this. You shall continue.
no, Andrew. In all seriousness, You think we should end it here, though? Because
You know, I'm gonna. Well,
We're getting
I'm,
to split in part two because there's various other projects I had in mind.
yeah.
We're also gonna have to do like there was also one locomotive that I was going to do, but sadly I need to do more research on it.
Actually, maybe, guys, how about we finish this stream on Saturday or Sunday?
All right.
Which one?
Could have talked about all those projects here, but nope.
no. Well, Well, here's the issue with that. On Saturday, I'm going to be seeing 765, and on Sunday, I'm going to be on a plane for most.
And on Saturday, I'm probably not also I'm not gonna be there as well.
Shit. We can't do it on Wednesday because
I might be going to an air museum alongside someone alongside the Clacton chairman.
well, that's why I've been making music videos lately, because I can't do the streams anymore on Wednesday. I mean, the only reason I was able to do it today is because I actually was able to get off early today. But
Well, how about we at least talk about one more locomotive, and then we can end this stream. That way, in case we don't ever do a part two again, I like to still talk about this one.
yeah, just do the final one. And I have a lot of regret right now after eating that banana.
And I also I've had, if anything, I have to say this is probably gotta be one of the most awkward during subjects streams we've had.
Yep, especially.
But
And Owen, I am sorry.
Is 3759.
Yes, it's a attempt restoration by the Grand Canyon Scenic Railroad, where they had to trade. What was it, number 20 or was it 19? Oh yeah, it was 19.
19. It was
But
also a tire steam excursion store, technically speaking.
yes,
It was donated to the city of Kingman, Arizona. And as a sort of a plan B to get passengers from LA, Max Beger wanted to propose a American-themed Orient Express train, if I remember correctly. But of course, the city of Kingman were kind of dicks and decided to keep 3759 for themselves. So no, definitely never run again thanks to a certain other norther.
actually, now that I realize it, all of the most locomotives there, well, the two locomotives who have been trumped by their classmate are both end in 59. 759, 3759.
Well, yeah.
Coincidence? I think not! I'm telling you, it's not a coincidence. It's a conspiracy, man. The oil company's getting grip on the government.
But
They're feeding us a bunch of lies, man. They're putting drugs in my Pepsi can.
oh my god.
Anyway, though, before the stream ends, this might be the last burning subjects for a while, especially because, as I said earlier, there's been schedule problems. But until then, I will be uploading small music videos related to steam locomotives. I've uploaded 4 already. First one, 734. I'm okay. The banana.
Eat it again.
No!
Yes.
No!
Fine. What are you gonna say?
And the second one I released is about 475. Third one is SMS number 9. And then the fourth one I've released so far is 614. Coming in the next couple of weeks is one about C&J 113. Anyway, see you guys next time. I'm gonna go suffer now. See you later.